can you see this person's perspective, but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
Welcome in, everybody. Still waiting on Teri, but I am here. I'm Devon O'Day. It is launch date. We gather together and have a little confab about life every Wednesday around noon. And I'm so glad that you guys show up because you guys have the best questions. You have the best insights. You guys share. And how you get involved in the show is you leave comments. There's Elizabeth. There's our buddy. Hello, Elizabeth. EB got such a good heart and she has great insights. And so today we're going to talk about failure. Failure. You know what's interesting about failure? People take it and I always say they put it in a little black bag and they keep it over with the garbage. I failed. I failed at that. We don't attempt things because we're afraid we will fail, or we have a memory of a failure and it kind of stays with us and it keeps us from even trying something different or new. But let me start with an insight about failure. Failure is the biggest memory in your head, but it doesn't even make the radar of everyone else's because people have amnesia about other people and their failures after about 6 weeks. Okay? About 6 weeks. A lot of people don't realize, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, right? We remember him because, there are electric companies named after him. There is a light bulb named after him. Edison created the light bulb. That was his success. But he had over 1,000 failures on the light bulb before that happened. Does anybody remember that? No. Okay, let's talk Babe Ruth, the Sultan of Swing, the king of the home run. He was also the king of the strikeout, but people don't remember him as the guy who struck out and struck out and struck out. Our memories of ourselves and our own failures. Now that could have kept him from ever walking to the mound again, ever walking up to the batter's circle, the batter's whatever. He would not go up to bat if he kept that failure in his head, but he didn't. He didn't. He looked at the ball, he kept his eye on the ball, and it went out of the stadium, I don't know how many times. So we think about the amnesia that other people have. You know why? It's because they're too busy thinking about their own failures. They're too busy thinking about that. Let's take a look at some of the comments that are on. Angie is with us. Hello, Angie. It's good to have you. It's good to have you. Spot on. Our brains retain our own failures much longer. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Joyce, how are you? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Y'all, we're waiting on Teri. She's not here right now, but today we're talking about turning our failures into teachable moments. The times we attempt something that we're not good. Okay. Your first steps as a toddler, were they great? Or were they a little shaky? Were you trying to hold on to something? Do you walk now like you did when you were a toddler? No, because you have practice and you use that as a lesson. You go, okay, this is great. I've learned how to do this. Okay, well, everything that we do the first time, I saw a meme the other day that was about our failures, and it said, everything that you do the first time you do badly. Everything. I thought about my first night on the radio. Oh, it was just awful. There she is. There she is. Hello, Teri.
Hi, how are you?
Good to have you. Good to have you. We're talking about failure, and I was just talking about everything. Pretty much everything that you do the first time, you do it badly the first time. Very few people are a professional on their first try at something they try to do. My first night on the radio, I was so shaky. Honey, I turned on that microphone. And it's like, hello. I tried to sound right, but my first night was not great. But I didn't stop there. And that's the thing about failure. I said, everyone's got amnesia about your failures. You think they remember your failures, but they don't. We talked about Edison. We talked about Babe Ruth. and nobody remembers how many times they fail, but they remember their successes. Um, have you had a moment of failure in your life ever?
Never.
I didn't think so.
No, of course I have. Um, but yeah, I look at it a little different. And I know people are just like, here she goes again with that stuff.
Okay.
But, I don't necessarily look at it as failure. I just look at it as practice. Like
Yep.
anything. Even, jobs, whatever it is, I mean, like, I guess it's failure if depending on what our attachment to failure is.
Mm-hmm.
Failure almost implies that we aren't good enough, we didn't try hard enough. And the truth of it is, if you're trying as hard as you can try, but you don't have the tools, then it's not really a failure. It's just that you didn't have the proper tools. So
Right.
you collect those and then you go again. But to your point about trying something and doing something the first time and maybe having our own self-judgment that we didn't do it as well as we think we should have. Sure. I mean, I think pretty much all of us do that, right? I mean, from
truth,
a variety of ways that we do that.
And I'm a firm believer in not letting the quote unquote failure, and I'm using that as the big term that we put on it sometimes in our lives, turning failures into teachable moments. And I'm the same way. I believe that you go out there and you try. I mean, I went out. Now, this is just, I'm just telling you right here. I have stage fright, but I have stage fright in certain situations because when I was a little girl, I was a baton twirler. I took from Miss Janice Pardue, and we were all having our baton recital. We all had our little white tights and our little red corduroy outfits for Christmas and our little sequins, and it was so cute. We were doing our little baton thing, trying not to hit each other, and we were dancing and doing our little kicks and hands on our hips. Well, something happened, and I noticed that there was a crowd out there, and I peed right there. I mean, right there. And and of course the material was such that it looked like it faded all down the front of my little white tights. And I just stood there, with all the people. So in my mind, I still have that little girl in my head, but I will guarantee you that not one person in that audience or even on that stage even remembers that moment except me. I'm just letting you out there know inside my head. So when I say I have stage fright, really, I'm just thinking about that little girl. But I've gotten on a gazillion stages since then because people have amnesia. Let's see. Connie Maynard joins us. Joy says, I tell y'all, I'm usually my own worst enemy. We're all our own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The woulda, shoulda, couldas, and all of those, we partner up with them. They become the Siamese twin that we never had in some way.
Well, Joy says, I helped lead singing at church Sunday and I was shaking like crazy. I felt the microphone shaking in my hand. That's part of it. But fear is not failure. Fear is the thing that helps push us and propel us and even make us better. Elizabeth says, I understand that little girl. I had a very similar moment. And you're right. No one else remembers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we all as human beings, that's part of our growing experience, right? We learn. So we have moments, especially imprint moments when we're younger, that imprint upon us, and then that little remembers it all through life. But most people around us, especially if they've grown with us or people we don't even know, they don't know that.
They have no clue. No clue.
You could probably tell people you don't have stage fright, and they would never know when you get on stage that they would never believe that you did have it because you don't present that way.
It's crazy. Jamie joins us. Hi, Jamie. Jamie has a really tough job. She sells advertising. She sells for our company. She represents the Dixon Post. And I tell you what, that sales is a place where failure is written into the script because people say no to people who sell things, whether it's cars or houses or, soap, Avon. I mean, when you have to knock on a door and say, hey, will you buy what I'm selling? It's just pretty much you understand you're going to be getting a few no's.
Right. And sometimes you get those no's before you even get out, before even out of your mouth comes the product or the service that you are selling or offering to someone, an opportunity to invest in or purchase. Sometimes the answer is no before that. And talk about, I mean, I'm sure Jamie could probably give us some, some tips and pointers on how that is for, I mean, your ego, your confidence. I mean, some people, I love little Girl Scouts because they're just like, you want to buy some cookies? And you can say yes or no. And they're like, okay, you want to buy some cookies? And they just keep going. Right.
Yeah.
But there are those moments where you see those kids that are like, oh, I don't want to ask them to buy something because I know they're going to say no. Those are usually the ones I single out, and I go and just buy ridiculous amounts because I no one ever wants, especially if you've ever had that feeling of rejection, because that's kind of what it is. You don't want anyone else, especially a child, to feel that. There's enough adults rolling around out there with their littles running amok, feeling it already. So we don't want to engage that.
I turned somebody around somebody. I don't love selling, but I have done it my whole life. And I worked with my dad at his insurance company, and we, I would go with him. And I went in, I can't even remember what I was selling, but someone did the big shutdown and they were really rude. And I go, oh my gosh, thank you. And they said, what? You did not waste my time. I can mark this off my list and I will never bother you again. But I said, this was so many people waste my time. You did not waste my time. You have made my day. I can go do something else now because I allotted 30 minutes for you. Thank you. And it was like, what? Well, wait a minute. Well, what are you selling?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh, that's okay. I don't have time now. No. What are you selling? And it was this, thank you for not wasting my time. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Jamie says, I never take no personally. I've had to learn that's not a reflection of failure. Amen.
Right.
That is so good, and I'm watching Kenny, who's in our office right now, making phone calls. And I said, did you get any no's? He said, yep, but I got a bunch of yeses too. He said, there's 25 names on my list. And I go, there you go. That's how you look at anything. Now, whether it's sales or whether it's life, whatever, there's other things on my list. There are things that I don't care to be good at. I don't think I'm a failure at them because I wasn't really good at them and I don't want to try them again. I'm not great at running and dribbling a ball at the same time. I was always the tall girl, so they all just thought I was going to be the basketball player, like everybody else in my whole freaking family has always been. All the women, including 2 that I heard of that play pro ball for the whatever the pro women's team was at the time. And I laugh about that because I just wasn't very good at it. And I remember my mom said, you're just not athletic. And then, but I found my sport. It was volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
I found the things that I really did excel at. But here's the thing is that failure, I always look at it as these little guides that kind of move you into the thing that is your thing. Mm-hmm. Everything, I'm not saying that you can't be good at everything. Maybe there are people that are good at everything. Tom Cruise seems to be good at everything he tries to do. I mean, from lip syncing to jumping out of airplanes and riding motorcycles and acting and who knows. But there might be something he's not good at. But I don't strive to be good at everything. I just want to find, and the sooner I get out of the way, the things that I don't really enjoy or I'm not good at, I can really excel at the things I like and I am good at.
Right.
It's not wasting my time. You see where I'm going with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's never, depending on how you look at it. If you look at it from a glass half empty, then yeah, people will say, well, it's just a waste of my time. I'm just a waste of my time. And it's like, but is it really? I mean, like if you're looking at it from a glass half full, it's not a waste of your time, whether it's a job that you spent time at, whether it's a hobby that you've had, whether it's a painting that you've worked on and it didn't turn out quite the way you wanted it to, whether it's a relationship you've been in, whether it's a health journey you've been on, it's if it's a glass half full, then it's really never a waste of time. If in those moments if in every one of those moments you were going, this is stupid, well, this is stupid, well, this is stupid, then yeah, you've probably wasted your time. But if in moments you're actually trying, then it's not a waste of time, regardless of how it turns out on any one of those fronts.
I love it. I love it. Connie, now I'm going to have to get you, I don't know. I've been modeling since I was 10 years old. To this day, I hear and remember the MC, say my name, but not another word. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So Connie, you're going to have to help me. Connie has created, now Connie's been through it. She lost her son, her adult son, to cancer. And she took all of that grief and all of that thing, and she has put it into a calendar of women that are powerful and beautiful and incredible. And she's raising money for cancer research. Nice. And she's taken her love of modeling and whatever and put that all into this beautiful calendar. The sweet and sassy calendar. And I love her for that. I love what she stands for. Yeah. In our life. I hate the word failure. I hate that word. I don't like it when in school, when they give grades and they say, well, you failed.
Right.
You failed out of that class. Yeah, I hate that.
I'm going to springboard back to what Connie had said, and this may or may not, she may be typing right now and we don't know what that answer is that she's giving, but she may be meaning that as a model, when she heard the MC say her name, typically as modeling, they say your name and then they follow that with some things about you or whatever. She might have been in that place where she just zoned out at that point and didn't hear anything.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. Like for runway modeling. Okay.
Yeah. And that may not be what she's talking about, but it might be. I don't know. Maybe she'll tell us.
Well, she's working on it. She's writing now. Anyway, failure, I think, is a word that has been put into so many situations these days. And I think if we start using it in a different vernacular, if we start using different words, I love when you say practice. There's Suzanne. I'm here today listening. I love Suzanne. That's awesome. Well, if we can take failure, and I love when you said practice, but teachable moments, turning failures to teachable moments. Hey, I'm learning how to do something. I'm learning something.
Right. Right.
Learning what you don't like is as important. Okay, let's springboard this whole thing. And we're talking about stuff that we're not good at, or we're talking about things that we attempt. Let's talk about relationships. Now, that's where failure in the grown-up adult world becomes a dirty word. I talked to someone who had failed at marriage. I'm a total flop. I'm a total failure at marriage. And I was like, whoa.
Well, those are some pretty strong words for a person. Yeah. I mean, like, it's one thing to be accountable for it didn't work out. But when people start kind of getting that martyrism thing about it, like, I mean, I have a hard time with, when people say things like, I failed at being a good parent, or I failed at this relationship. To me, that feels very victim-y. And I don't particularly, it's kind of like, because depending on how long you've been a parent and how long you've been in a relationship or you've been in a job, 24/7, 365, you weren't failing at it. So when you sit down and you say, I just failed at that, I'm just not good at it. Well, then you know what? You have a choice. You can wallow in that, or you can go, well, you know what? I did everything I could do, or I've had these teachable moments with my child, or I've tried to work this out with my boss, my coworker, my spouse, my partner, whomever. And for some reason, it's not working. And so you don't throw your hands up and storm off like a child and go, I failed at it. You just, you know what? Maybe there's something else I'm not seeing here. So let me just shift perspectives a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will sometimes refer to, and I'm not throwing him in front of the bus or anything, but my friend Duncan had been married 5 times. 5. And he met a woman named Cheryl, who I think was married 5 times. She goes, "We have 10 marriages between us." They fell hopelessly in love. I says, "Well," and I had been to like 3 of those weddings with Duncan. So, I mean, and it's like, and I said, "Oh, really? You're getting married again?" He says, "I believe in marriage. And I'm going to keep going until I find the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. I'm not giving up on marriage, and I'm not giving up on love." And do you know, he and Cheryl, with whatever their track record was, they found each other, and they're still married, and it's been over 25 years. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just amazing. And, he said, "I never give up on the institution of marriage. I could just live with somebody, but I don't believe in that. I really want to be married." And I think that is amazing. A lot of people know who I'm talking about too. So,
I mean, and I think that's beautiful. I think it's always interesting when people say, you've been, like, people ask, how many relationships you've been in, how many you've been married, those questions. And sometimes people are using that information because they're not because they're looking for something to kind of go, here, this is why. But, I kind of get on my soapbox with how dare them about that, because
mhm.
why should anybody begrudge anyone from finding happiness and being truly happy? You
That's
know,
right.
and
That's right. The people who don't give up.
right, right. And life is hard enough already, or challenging enough already, with just the way that social structures are set for people, where there's all the do's and the don'ts, and this is how you act like a lady, and this is what you do, and this, and not that there's anything wrong with being a lady, but there's also, I mean, I have friends who are like, I would never, I mean, like, I don't pump gas. My husband pumps gas for me. And I'm like, that's great. If your husband likes doing that and you like doing that, that's great. But if I have a flat tire, I can change that. And I feel good about that. So, it's the construct, I think, of how people view what we can, can't, should, and shouldn't do. And they get judgy. And then we're not being authentic at that point. So a lot of times people are like, "Well, I'm failing. I'm not being enough. I'm not being good enough. I'm not being fill in the blank." And then fear creeps in there, because fear is like, "Oh, well, you weren't good enough then. You won't be good enough now." And it's like, a lot of history. I just said this to a client before I jumped on this today. There's a lot of history in between who you were when you did what you did and who you are today. And you can't go
Right.
at it in the same mindset that you're going to, that you are that person, and you're to carry that guilt, resentment, or whatever it is with you. Because if you're an adult and your motive is to carry anger around with you, I have news for you. Chronologically, you're an adult, but emotionally, you are not.
Oh, I run into that all the time. People, you know, they have arguments like a 2-year-old or a 10-year-old. The emotional intelligence of a 10-year-old. Elizabeth says, "I find that sometimes something that feels like a failure can actually be a blessing." Oh Lord, I've walked that road. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. There's
Mm-hmm.
even a song about it, "Unanswered Prayer." Garth Brooks sang
Yeah.
it. As long as you try is not a failure. It's not a failure. You might not be good at one thing. You might be better at something else. I love that, Suzanne. That's so true. Uh, Ron,
And
this is, huh?
the go ahead.
I was just going to reroute. Ron, go ahead. No, because
Well,
you were answering what Suzanne said.
the other thing is prioritizing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you ask me to go out and play soccer, I probably won't be good at soccer. If I was 20 years old, I probably wouldn't be good at it. That doesn't mean I failed at it. It means it's not a priority for me. I was good at softball. I was good
Mm-hmm.
at basketball. But soccer and volleyball, they're not, I don't have an interest in it. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we have to ask ourselves, get clear with ourselves. Do I have an interest in this?
Yeah.
A lot of people go and they do those sip and stroke paint classes. And then some people are like, "Wow, this was fantastic." And other people are like, "I just did a cat because I didn't want to do what they were doing because it was stupid and I didn't like it." And I'm like, "So you were afraid you weren't going to do well." And you want to do a cat when they're doing a landscape, fine, do a cat, but just own it and just say, it's not my thing. And also be okay with not being perfect at everything.
Amen.
You
Rhonda
know,
says someone recently cut me way down and I try to be the most positive. And I was talking about how bad I felt to another longtime friend. And he says, I wish people would start filling up your cup instead of peeing in it. It's so true. And it turned the situation around for me. Surround yourself with positive people. Maybe.
yeah, yeah.
And you know, positivity comes in all sorts of cups. I'm just gonna say.
And the other thing is, you might be having a conversation with somebody and you might think into your head, they're not very positive.
Mhm.
But they, from their lens, might be looking at you and going, oh my gosh, they're not very positive. They don't see things the way I see it. So, you know, I read a lot and I see a lot of, you know, people saying, well, you shouldn't fear this and you shouldn't fear that. But people fear what they fear. And sometimes they fear that they'll fail, and other times they fear that they'll succeed.
Yep.
Because, you know, a client said to me one time, well, I'm just afraid I'm fearful that I won't do good at it. And I was like, honey, we're humans. We have failing mastered.
Yeah.
Mastered. So we can't really be going talking about I'm afraid I'm going to fail at it. How many times have we failed? We should be experts at failing. Like, we should be experts at failing, and also embrace that and be okay with it. But lean into what when you succeed at it and you're successful, because
Yep.
then everything changes.
One of the things for me is I've learned to laugh at myself. That's the thing. Laughter, and I love laughing. So it's been my new thing. It's like, I don't even call it failure. It's my next chance to laugh. It's my next thing to talk about on stand up. It's just like, life is so funny. It's just so funny. Elizabeth says it helps me to start my day in gratitude. When I'm able to do that, the less than positive things during the day are easier to face. Amen. To the man. The other night, the other day, I did half a show. I had this shirt, you know, that was in the Goodwill pile, and I forgot. And stop me if I've told you this already. I might have told it on this show, but it's still funny to me. I forgot why I put in the Goodwill thing. I said, "Oh, I like this little velvet thing. It's a little velvet short sleeve shirt." And I said, "Oh, it's good. It covers up the part of my neck I don't like." You know, I said, "Oh, this is good. I love it." So I got on stage, and then I remembered halfway through the show why it was in the Goodwill box, because it rolls up. And I looked down, and nobody had told me I had done half a show with that, with like I doing my Shania Twain midriff exposed thing. I went, good Lord. But joke was on them. I went, and instead, and people came out and said, "Oh my God, Devon, your shirt. And I looked down and I walked out there. Y'all think y'all have seen me doing my Shania Twain thing. Y'all think I have let my shirt roll up. I said, no, I am 61 years old. This is a spank. And I pulled it out. This is my Spanx. I said, y'all ain't seeing no skin. As I just went right with it. And I was literally had a line of women telling me their embarrassing wardrobe malfunction stories. And if we can laugh at ourselves, we give permission for other people to laugh. So it's not really a failure.
Not at all. There was a lady on I don't know if it was Facebook or Instagram. I want to say it was probably Instagram, but she was a pastor or a minister at a church, and I don't know where. And some of the folks listening might have seen this, but she was getting into her sermon, and it was about loving yourself and being kind to yourself. And she was, I mean, when I say model ready, she was dressed, right? She could have strolled out of Neiman Marcus. She could have strolled out of anywhere, and she looked like that is where she was. And halfway through her sermon, her wig fell off. And she rolled with it. And it was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. There were women in the audience that were also taking their wigs off and like laying them up on the stage, you know, where she was, because it was a way of just radical acceptance around things happen in life that can embarrass us, but we don't fail at it. It's just something that happens. Like, if you fall when you're walking, you haven't failed at walking the rest of your life. You just tripped. Like, it's not the end all be all. And so creating a space, like you said, Devon, for laughter, for just acceptance around acknowledgement that you're human.
The young woman who went up to accept her Oscar from the not the Crying Game, but the Hunger Games. Jennifer, and I can't think of her name. Anyway, had this beautiful long gown and tripped going up to get her Oscar. She just went with it. And if we can just go with it. And Jennifer Lawrence, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Teri. You said it too. As I just think if we can take that failure word and make it, I said, instead of holding it in the old black garbage bag and pulling it out and to just stack it over in the corner with all the other things we consider those, let's just open them all up and look at them. And I bet if we look back, nobody else remembers them. We do. We can either let them go like a failure, like it's going to go out into smoke, or it's going to make us laugh uproariously, because those failure stories usually are the funniest.
Yeah. I mean, they're I think that, like you said, Devon, I think that we label it failure because that's just the known word for it. But it's really how you approach it. You can approach it where the word failure feels really heavy, or you can approach it where it's just another chance to try. I said to someone, and I think I've posted this before, well, I started to say what I said. I don't even remember what I said now, so maybe I felt it. I'm not sure. It was something that I posted about, by any other word is opportunity, and so it wasn't failure, but it was something like that. By any other word is opportunity. And what that meant was, or what I meant in the time when I was posting that, is that we do get hung up. And if you count your failures and you only allot yourself so many, then at some point you'll give up. And failures are stepping stones. Some of them are little and they're tiny and you can put your big toe on them, and other ones are so big your ass can fit on them, and you can still see it, so but they're just opportunities to continue growing and also to learn. So if your mindset is that you get down on yourself and you berate yourself because you're not doing as good as you think you should, or worse, you're comparing yourself to someone else, then you have to come into a self-kindness place and go, let me just think about it. I mean, some people are completely humiliated if they ever fall. And I think I've shared this with you before, Devon. My daughter and I, we're the world's worst. We will start laughing at each other if we fall. I mean, first we go, are you okay? Real quick, we get that in there. And if you get the nod or whatever, then they're okay. And then we just start laughing. And sometimes we're trying to hold back a laugh while we're asking if you're okay. And it's not that we do that because we're insensitive. It's just because we've learned to laugh at those things that, as long as we haven't broken a hip or a leg or something. And obviously if it's someone else that falls, we're not busting out laughing, we're offering to help. But we have a thing with us that it's like, it's okay to laugh at the adversities that set us back a little bit, because according to my daughter, I'm the slowest faller in history. She says that you could cook a full dinner in the time that I trip and I actually fall and hit the ground. And I try to run it. So that makes it even funnier because I look like some kind of Cartoon Network skit about it. And it's okay, but yeah, we're not failing. We're living, and we're living plugged in. And sometimes when you live plugged in, you get a little shock.
Yep. You absolutely do. And I know we're going long, but it's also important to not stress our failures. But at the other side of that is, don't sit in your glory seat.
That's right.
Because that's as much, I mean, I have people who have lived in a past glory, whether it's the guy who had the winning touchdown in 1972, or the woman who won the beauty pageant way back when, and don't you know who I think I am, that kind of thing, living in that glory. I have one right now that brings up the Grammy really a lot. And I said, if you walk down the road, if that Grammy is going to buy you a cup of coffee, then maybe, okay. Not to celebrate your successes. I'm not talking about that, but living and getting stuck in the glory seat also keeps you from moving. Just like getting stuck in the failure seat, stuck in the glory seat will keep you from moving. We are growing, moving people. Experiencing life as it comes is so ultimately the most important part of our journey. And experience something new today, and don't let something stop you just because it didn't work out the first, second, third, or maybe 10th time. Just if it's something you want to do, you burn to do it, enjoy it and do it. I mean, first time in a kayak. How was your first time in a kayak?
It was really good, actually.
See, sometimes that's the little signals that say, oh,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do this.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And over the years I've kayaked, I've flipped it over one time. And that was because I thought that I was close enough into the land, because I usually get out at about 4 foot. And I got out and it was about 8 foot. And I flipped it. And then I laughed about it and I just drug it up to the shore. But, you know, first time I drove, I was terrified. You know, I mean, first time I karaoke'd, oh my God, are you kidding me? You know, I mean, terrified, failed at it, you know, that whole thing. But how do you fail at karaoke? I mean, really.
My favorite story about karaoke is that Shelby Lynn went in, and of course nobody knew who she was at the time. And I mean, she can dress down and not be Shelby Lynn. And she went in to sing, and she actually sang her song that had been out on the radio. And somebody said, you know, you keep practicing, you'll be almost as good as that girl on the recording.
Mm-hmm.
I just laugh. Context, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, okay. Here's one that's going to be funny. It's going to be our last one that we're going to talk to. Okay. I dried my granny panties at my white nylon raincoat with my white nylon raincoat with hood. I rushed in the post office to mail cards. I smiled at everyone, wished them Merry Christmas, and they all smiled at me. Got in the car, took a jacket, and my panties had been stuck to the Velcro on the hood.
Yes.
Oh, Connie, that is great. That is a brilliant story.
It is. I mean, how many times have you done that? You know, I've put clothes on before, sat through an entire session with a client and realized my shirt was on inside outwards. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'm just like, well,
yeah.
You know.
The static of a sock stuck to the back of my shirt. I did a radio show and interviewed people and everything with a sock on my shirt. And then, you know, and thank you for the people that told me. They didn't. I found it in the bathroom. I go, what?
Right.
What is that? You know, the joy of living alone. That is part of it. Well, you guys, we meet here every Wednesday at noon. This is launch date. And if you need to send an idea, this actually came from an idea. Somebody actually sent this in to devonoday@gmail.com. And I thought it's really cool. Let's share about failure, which we don't even want to use that word. We ain't none of us failures. We're just all learners.
Right. We're learners.
And Teri, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All righty. Well, as always, we appreciate each and every one of you sharing your time and your energy with us. It means a lot to us, and it's just fun to share, to uplift, and to be in your circle. And as you go through the rest of this week, if you're in the Nashville area, enjoy this amazing weather that we're having, because it feels almost like fall out there today, and it's lovely. And if you're not, well, enjoy wherever you are. And I know that if you look, you will find something to be grateful for, and something that you see of beauty inside or outside of yourself. And until we see you next Wednesday, increase your peace.